Thank you so much. David, thank you for those kind words of introduction. Mr. Librarian, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for never, ever giving up or never giving in. Thank you for keeping the faith. I'm so delighted and so pleased to be here this afternoon to see each and every one of you. Now, you heard that I didn't grow up in a big city like Washington, D.C., or Baltimore, or Silver Springs, or Rockville, Alexander, Atlanta. I grew up on a farm in rural Alabama, about 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But back in 1944, when I was only 4 years old, my father had saved $300, and with the $300, he bought 110 acres of land. And on this farm, there was a lot of cotton and corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. On the farm, it was my responsibility to care for the chickens. And I fell in love with raising chickens like no one else could raise chickens. Now, do any of you know anything about raising chickens? Can I see the hands of those who know something about raising? Okay, well, let's have a little fun here this afternoon. Well, as a little boy, when the setting hen was set, I had to mark the fresh egg with a pencil and place them on under the setting hen and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you may be saying, now, John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil and place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen would get on that same nest, and there would be some more eggs. And you had to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? You don't follow me. It's okay. It's all right. When these little chicks would hatch, I would take these little chicks and put them in a box with a lantern, raise them on their own, or just give them to another hen and get some more fresh eggs and mark them with a pencil and place them under the setting hen and encourage the setting hen to stay in the nest for another 3 weeks. When I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do, the most loving thing to do, and the most nonviolent thing to do, to keep on cheating on the setting hens. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember, especially in the Midwest and in the South, we used to get the Citizen Roebuck catalog. And are you old enough to remember the Citizen Roebuck catalog? Really? Let me see the hands of those. Those very good. That big book, that thick book, that heavy book. Some people call it the ordering book. Others call it the wish book. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. But I just kept on wishing. I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive hatch or incubator from the Citizen Roebuck store. So we just kept on cheating on these setting hens and fooling these setting hens. As a little child, about 8 or 9 years old, I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to preach the gospel. So from time to time, with the help of my brothers and sisters and my fresh cousins, we would gather all of those chickens together in the chicken yard, like you're here under this large tent. And we would have church. My brothers and sisters and fresh cousins would line the outside of the yard, but they helped make up the audience and the congregation along with the chickens. And I would start speaking or preaching, and when I look back on it, some of those chickens would bow their heads. Some of those chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen. But I'm convinced that some of those chickens that I preached to in the 40s and the 50s tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listen to me today in the Congress. As a matter of fact, some of those chickens were just a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. Well, that's enough about that story. But one thing those chickens did, they taught me patience. They taught me to wait and not get in a hurry. Just wait. Be patient. That eggs would not hatch in 1 or 2 or 3 days, but it was going to take 3 long weeks for those eggs to hatch. The civil rights movement taught me patience. To never give up, never to give in, to never give out, but to always keep your eyes on the prize. So this little book, Across That Bridge, is about patience, about study, hope, truth, love, and reconciliation. Now, when I was growing up there in rural Alabama, and we visited the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Tuskegee, and later as a student in Nashville, Tennessee, and later living in Atlanta, I saw those signs that said white men, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting. But as a little child, I would ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, and great-grandparents why, and they would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. But in 1955, at the age of 15, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard of Martin Luther King Jr. In 1957, at the age of 17, I met Rosa Parks. The next year, in 1958, at the age of 18, I met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The action of Rosa Parks, the people in Montgomery, and the teaching and leadership of Dr. King inspired me to get in the way, to get in trouble. So more than 50 years, I've been getting in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. So Across That Bridge is really a lesson about getting in trouble, good trouble. And that's what I think in America today, we need more people to get in trouble, good trouble. If you believe in something that is so right, so dear, so necessary, you have to get in trouble. But before we got in any trouble as students, as young people, we studied. We just didn't wake up one morning and say we're going to go and sit in. We didn't just dream one day that we're going to come to Washington and go on a freedom ride, or that we were going to march on Washington as we did in 1963, that we were going to march from Selma to Montgomery as we did in 1965. We studied. We prepared ourselves. As college students, as high school students in the city of Nashville, every Tuesday night for an entire school year, a group of us would meet at 6:30 p.m. We studied what Gandhi attempted to do in South Africa, what he accomplished in India. We studied Thoreau and civil disobedience. We studied the great religions of the world. We studied what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was all about. And we were ready. And we would be sitting in, or standing in at a theater, or going on a freedom ride, and we would be beaten. We would be jailed. But we didn't strike back, because many of us grew to accept nonviolence as a way of living, as a way of life. That it's better to love than to hate. We wanted to build a beloved community. We wanted to be reconciled. So this book is also about reconciliation. To give you one example, I first came to Washington, D.C. May 1st, 1961, to go on something called a Freedom Ride. 13 of us, 7 whites and 6 African Americans. We came here on May 1st. We studied. We participated in nonviolent workshops. And I will never forget it, on the night of May 3rd, someplace in downtown Washington, we went to a Chinese restaurant. Now, growing up in rural Alabama, going to school in Nashville, I'd never been to a Chinese restaurant before, never had a meal at a Chinese restaurant. But that night, we had a wonderful meal. The food was good. And someone said, "You should eat well, because this may be like the last supper." The next day, on May 4th,